Good morning. I'm Wenley Ferguson, and I work at Save the Bay. And Save the Bay's a member of the Green Infrastructure Coalition. And the focus of the coalition is to develop strategies to address the impacts of stormwater runoff to our rivers, and in this case, Narragansett Bay. We're here along the Seekonk River, which is a tidal estuary, and it gets brackish a little further upstream, but here it's you could see the salt marsh grasses, that's Spartina alterniflora, growing along the edge of the wall here. So that tells us it's still pretty salty. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the projects that Save the Bay's been working on with municipalities over the last 10 years. This is one of them. We're at River Road, right along the Seekonk, and I'm standing on some riprap that was placed here to address one of the impacts of stormwater, which is erosion. So we have a lot of stormwater coming down from Irving Avenue, where it joins with River Road, and that runoff comes down with such velocity that it literally has carved this bank away. And Greg is going to pan in. There is a granite block wall all along the Seekonk River here. And the velocity of that stormwater runoff over years and years of no management of the stormwater literally has caused this entire bank to collapse. And the city came in a few years ago and put this riprap, all this small stone along the bank. A few years ago, this was just a complete gully. So one of the projects the city's doing is repairing this wall, and we are going to try to restore some of the native grasses along the edge of the wall. But an important component is to address the volume of water that comes down this that discharges at this point. So the city has applied for funding through DEM's watershed restoration program, and as part of the overall project, we have designed stormwater infiltration areas further up in the watershed, so we reduce the amount of stormwater that discharges here over time. Okay, we're at York Pond, which this used to be actually connected to the Seekonk River, and the watershed of York Pond includes Blackstone Boulevard and that entire developed area on the east side. Probably about 15 years ago, a stormwater management structure was installed along the inlet of York Pond, but that only got to address some of the stormwater runoff coming down from that developed watershed. So the Blackstone Parks Improvement Association, they are a neighborhood organization that I think they're now called the Conservancy. Okay, the Blackstone Park Conservancy, that formed to try to restore the parkland right here along the Seekonk River, has been looking at different things that we can do up in the watershed, stormwater management all the way up at Blackstone Boulevard, and they're trying to develop a plan looking at things like linear bioswales, infiltration that we can incorporate into the watershed so that we have less runoff discharging right here to York Pond, which eventually flows out to the Seekonk River. Great. So this is an interesting way to address stormwater. This is a curb cut here. The water comes down the street through this curb opening, and the city installed this half a piece of PVC pipe so that the water would flow directly out to the wall. I believe there was erosion occurring right here at the base of this curb cut. And one of the things that we could do in an area like this is have a curb cut a little further away from the outlet and use this area that I'm standing on for linear infiltration, so that you take advantage of some of the open space in this area and use it for stormwater infiltration, so you don't have as much water flowing out at this low point. Because once you get here, there's very little room for stormwater management.
Okay.
One of the impacts of stormwater runoff, of course, is it carries pollution from the land down into our rivers and bay. And it also impacts habitats. And this is a place where you can see the direct impact of stormwater runoff on, in this case, a coastal habitat. At the base of this bank, there's a lot of stone and soil that has eroded off the landscape, and it has impacted the salt marsh vegetation. The salt marsh grasses are also not as thick here, they're not as wide, because again, that velocity of stormwater runoff has caused the vegetation to get scoured, and it can't grow in an area with in an area where the discharge occurs.
Go.
Okay, this is Gulf Road, which extends north of River Road, and the city a number of years back closed this road to vehicle use, which is a great thing because it's a wonderful spot for people to enjoy the Seekonk River. Another component of this project is to reduce the amount of asphalt here. This is a significant amount of pavement, and by reducing that asphalt, we're going to be reducing the stormwater runoff. There are a number of what we call those curb cuts along Gulf Road where the water flows directly, the stormwater flows directly untreated into the river. So by reducing the pavement, we're going to be reducing the impacts to the Seekonk River. So there are lots and lots of opportunities like this to de-pave our watershed, reduce the amount of pavement, increase public access at the same time, and reduce the amount of stormwater runoff.
Anytime you're ready.
Okay, so we're right along the edge of Irving Avenue in a section of the Blackstone Park, and this is an area that is proposed to infiltrate the stormwater runoff, creating a bioswale. It would be tiered because of the slope. So these plants behind me, which are an invasive plant, it's burning bush or euonymus, would be removed, and this area would be excavated. Forebay, which is an area where the sediment is captured, would be the first component. There'd be an inlet coming in from the roadway. There you could see all that runoff coming down from Irving and Loring Avenue. And so there'd be an inlet structure, then a forebay to capture the sediment, and then another depression, which would be grass, covered with grass, and possible to mow by the city, would be the area where the stormwater would infiltrate. And then any of the overflow would flow over land and back down to the pavement. But the good thing is most of the pollutants would be removed, because most of the pollutants are in that first flush of stormwater runoff.
Anytime.
So we are further up in the watershed, not too far. You can still see the Seekonk River and York Pond. This is where Irving Avenue comes down from Blackstone Boulevard, and it meets up with Loring. And this is one of the widest, steepest slope intersections I've ever seen. And what we're proposing, talking to the city planning department and the Department of Public Works, is reducing the width of this roadway, cutting it back and narrowing it so it will have the benefit of calming or slowing the traffic down as cars approach the park and River Road, and using the space where the pavement's been removed and part of this green space here for stormwater infiltration. And again, there's a lot of real estate here to manage the stormwater before it gets to that discharge that you saw where the erosion was occurring, and there was literally no space to do any stormwater management. So this project will have the benefit of slowing traffic, making it more pedestrian and bike friendly, and managing stormwater runoff. So the stormwater runoff has such velocity here, just like we saw massive erosion down along the Seekonk River. It hops this curb and it causes, I'm probably about 6 inches below, this is all eroded inland of the curb line, and further down the city has actually had to add asphalt to the top of the curb, and because of the erosion along the sidewalk area, again, that water is flowing with such great force and such great volume that it hops the curb and causes significant erosion inland of the curb. So managing stormwater runoff is also going to, again, improve pedestrian use of the site and public safety. So we're still in the watershed of that outlet that I showed you down by the Seekonk River, but now we're a good deal inland, and this is an example of trying to find places inland to treat stormwater management. Here we have a storm drain, and we have some space here to do some stormwater management. There's an old asphalt sidewalk that could be reduced in size, and we could potentially do a curb cut here, an inlet, to allow the stormwater to flow into an infiltration area, hugging that curb line and treating and infiltrating, removing some of those pollutants before they get to that catch basin. So this would, again, reduce the volume of water flowing down to the Seekonk River and reduce the pollutant loading.